upon me, fighting all day long. He oppresses me. So he has that kind of fear, but he trusted God on that situation. In the book of Psalms was very special to Jesus and the apostles, and their most quoted part of scriptures. This was probably because the Psalms speak of the depths of people's pain. King David experienced pain. Who else who didn't experience pain? Every one of us experiencing pain. In this situation, this time of trying and challenging situation, season, many people around the world experiencing pain, and many people experiencing fear. Pain and a whole range of human experience and emotions. From the book of Psalms, we learn to be honest with God, with what we feel and our fears. The Bible has over 365 commands on not being afraid. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's one, do not fear. He said, the command, do not fear, for I am with you. That's he said. For us, for each day of the year, God does not want us to live in fear, because doing so will paralyze us. Fear can rob us of today's joy, today's our joy. I will repeat it again. Fear can rob us of today's our joy when we focus on what might go wrong tomorrow. For example, how many of us experience being consumed with irrational fears and worries during this pandemic, during this crisis? Let's look at what Psalms 56 teaches on what to do on our fears. The context of this Psalms points us back to 1 Samuel, as I mentioned a while ago. If you want to read that in your own time, in 1 Samuel chapter 21, verse 10 to 15, King David was in such, or King David is not yet king at the time, because uh, they want to kill him on that situation. So David was in such a dire situation when he composed this song. Anyway, this is song in the book of Psalms. When he composed this song, here we learn from David that in a time of fear, we should transfer our focus from what makes us afraid to God, in order to be able to do, to be able to do that, we have put our trust, believe, and our faith in who God is. Who God is. That is said in Psalms before. He is our refuge. He is our rescuer. He is our rest. So who God is, He is the one who is going to rescue us. And at that time of situation that King David is hiding for the armies, he kept hiding to the mountains in the wilderness. He kept running from them because of that fear. So, these Psalms teach us on what to do with our fears. So in that situation, sometimes we experience as a natural uh, uh, emotions that we are going to have that kind of fears in worries for what is going to happen in this the world. So our focus from what makes us afraid is to God. Focus on God. In order to be able to do, we have to put our trust, our faith, strong faith in who God is. Trust. Trust comes from the Hebrew words batach, B-A-T-A-C-H. That is the Hebrew word of trust, which carries the idea of resting and clinging onto the Lord, to move from fear to trust in God. That's what it means. Trust, which carries the idea of resting and clinging onto the Lord, to move from fear to trust in God. What we must do. What we must do if we are going to experience such situations in this uh, uncertainty of life, in this season of trying in challenging time. What we must do to move that fear to trust in God, we must turn to the Lord. We're going to look at four things on this passage. So we must, number one, we must turn to the Lord. To trust God is to turn to Him. David's first response to danger that confronted him was to call on the Lord. On that situations was to call upon the Lord, as it says in verse 1 in Psalms 36. Be gracious to me, O God, for man has trampled upon me, fighting all day long, presses me. So he turned to him, he turned to God on that situation. That his first response of that danger of his life, that he confronted God alone, confronted the Lord. He called on the Lord. Sometimes we also experience this. We also see His humanity. We also see His humility, a human humility. As He prayed, He acknowledged that He needed God's grace. As we can go to God to pray, we need to be humble. We need to have a humility of heart as we're going to go near unto Him and pray. As David, humility as he prayed to God. He acknowledged that he needed God's grace in his predicament. That is in verse 1 I've mentioned a while ago. He acknowledged God on his predicament. So in verse 1, in Psalms 56 verse 1, notice how he described his situation to the Lord. He was running away from Saul's manhunt of him. And when he found reprieve in the distant land of Gath, he found himself captured. His enemies, who knew who he was, David was a champion fighter against the Philistines' numerous army. You know the story of King David? He killed Goliath, isn't it? Through sling stone. He is a champion fighter against the Philistines, a numerous army. So on that times, but But now he falls